Some 10 years ago, a little glint of fire ruptured the relative peace enjoyed by agrarian, farming and nomadic communities of northern Nigeria. With little or no attention paid to it, it soon began to spread like a cancerous tissue.
I had a picture of a malignant cancer, of a tissue which has been attacked by cancer. And I said that this thing will become like a malignant cancer.
It touches Sokoto Zamfara border, Zamfara Kebbi border, Zamfara Katsina border, Zamfara Kaduna border, and that is how the whole conflict keep on moving. It is a moving conflict.
This is called banditry, the rural criminality that is fast evolving and has become perhaps the most challenging security threat for Nigeria at the moment, overtaking the insurgency in the northeast in terms of casualty figures in recent months.
Nobody will give you the statistics with high level of accuracy on the number of people killed. In my own opinion, there are over 70,000 people killed from the beginning of this conflict to date.
The violence has also led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of villagers in the last 10 years, with some of them still taking refuge in public buildings, markets and other places. Aside persons who have moved to other Nigerian cities, over 50,000 others are reported to be taking refuge across the border in Niger Republic. Many rural dwellers in the affected states have bitter tales to tell. Hadiza Sani from the village of Ura Agama Lafia in Zurmi local government of Zamfara state recalls how her community was displaced.
Mana nan sai ga bare sun mana faramaki. Suna mana faramaki, muna nan sun ka shiga gari sun kai ta harbe sun kai ta harban mana maza za ka gani inda dan daga an rabe mai hannu. Sannan sun ka kama maza sun kai ta falka anda sun ka kwanan sun ka kare sun ka mutu anda kwanan su ba su kare ba. An kai ta halbin su ana kwasa ana kawo asibiti.
The hollow left in the heart of Zainab Ibrahim is one that will never heal. She still cries, she says, when she remembers how her little son was slaughtered before her eyes.
Mutum uku sun ka riko mai gida na sun ka hiddo na. Sun kai wani gida da shi ni ko aka banne da katin shidda. Da eki din su kan nan da hitilar su ta kai nan niya suka taho suna yadiya ta. Ina faɗuwa ni ko na taso da gidan kwana da ɗana tasowa ya cabki. Suka ce ai oga wannan ya kuce ya suka ce to tun da sun kuce ai ga mata ce nan da yaya ni gabana nan da ya rike ni ya ci min na ci min shi ya ce kai ko ka mushi an yankan rago ko a hande su da an ka ce a'a an ka ce yankan rago za a masa an ka kwantar da shi ya an hizge shi gare da za a hizge shi kuka ni kuka ko da an ka hizge shi ban da rayuwa. Not
only was her little child killed, Zainab was kidnapped and tortured for 2 months.
In dare yayi za a dare ni da sabon tulu ana zuba man ruwan sabon tulu. Ai baya da hannuwa na a dare, nan ni ya kafa na a dare. In rana ta yi akan tsakar rana a ce in kwakwar idanuwa na.
Children like young Hawa are not spared of the traumatic experience.
An kashe min uwa, an kashe min uba, shine ni tsero dukiya ga babanmu. Sun ka zo sun ka ce ya ba su dukiya ko su kashe shi. Ya ce shi bai da sun ka kashe shi da shi da mamanta. Sun ka kwashe yanayi.
These victims now live under the care of a man who has become a shield to many of the vulnerable victims, Alhaji Muhammadu Bako Sarkin Yamma, in the outskirts of Gusau, the Zamfara state capital. With the mass killings and displacement, the people's source of livelihood is adversely cut down, as farmlands were either abandoned or raised by the attackers.
We have at least 80% of where the food is grown and where the herders operate peacefully in those days, we have at least 80% of them that have been affected, and affected in almost absolute terms.
Just go to Kusau, go to Katana, and see traumatized, villages who have moved to the major cities. People who, under normal circumstances, will not beg, have been transformed into beggars. Women, responsible women have been transformed into prostitutes. They have to feed themselves. They have to feed their children. Many of them have lost their husbands. How do we deal with this trauma?
In the past decade, militia groups formed initially by the youth of Fulani ethnic background have grown into cantankerous gangs engaging in cattle rustling, arson, mass killings, and kidnapping for ransom, and attracted willing collaborators.
When they started the recruitment, they were actually looking and seeking for support from their fellow Fulani folks. And those that populated the first generation of these people we call the bandits were initially Fulani, because it was a Fulani problem.
Their indulgence in this crime is aided by their access to small and light weapons. These arms range from the more common AK-47 rifles to more sophisticated machine guns and rocket launchers. The arms find their ways into the hands of the criminal groups, mainly from the vast open border Nigeria shares with Niger Republic.
Accumulation with many problems. Libya, Chad, Mali, arms and ammunition finding their way into Nigeria. How do they come to Nigeria? They have to come through Niger Republic.
In 2021 alone, 9,423 Nigerians were killed in the orgy of violence in different parts of the country, with the 6th state afflicted by banditry recording 4,104 deaths. Those blamed for the atrocities today are people who for years lived in peace with their neighbors. Senator Said Ansadaw, whose community forms the epicenter of the rural banditry, recalls the peace times.
I recall with nostalgia, when the Fulani settle in an individual farm, if they are having naming ceremony, they invite the indigenous farmers to the naming ceremony. We used to spend the whole day, in the ruga of the Fulani, during Kimfra with Nono, eating the kind of rice they cook. Normally when they cook rice, they put milk inside it. Very nice, very unique, So it was quite a smooth and cordial relationship.
Alhaji Usman Aliyu Gangara, the district head of Gangara in Sokoto's Sabon Birni local government, whose community was run down by bandits in November 2021, and a young man, Hassan Dankwaru, took over control of the village, lives in shock and disbelief. He fights back tears as he recalls the events.
Asibiti sun ka shiga garin nan. Wallahi tun wannan lokacin har yanzu nan bakin garin ga wallahi ban taɓa wuciya ba. Tun nan wajen wata. Wallahi babu irin kuka da hawaye da na kuka. Saboda lokacin in ka ga halin da mutane su don kai musu hawaye.
Such aggression, he says, was never imagined because of the cordiality of relationships between Hausa and Fulani communities in the area only a few years ago. But the researchers and followers of the conflict say the seed of the violent uprising today was sowed from those days of seeming peace as injustice by local leaders and security agents, as well as neglect of pastoral communities, eroded trust and bred disaffection.
One seminar I attended, some of the leaders came and said the police called them ATM.
The police, the Alkali, the area court, the traditional rulers have realized that a typical Fulani Keturiara detests being detained or his child being detained. Because I have seen it, rather than detain a typical Fulani cattle rearer for 2 days, he prefers, in fact, you kill his 2 children. Why? Because if you detain him, he has nowhere to detain you. But if you kill his children, no matter how long, if you kill his 2 children, he'll come and kill your own 10. So, and my belief is that they have some superstitious belief about detention or imprisonment. And that's why, rather than detain them in 2 days in police custody, they wouldn't mind giving you 20,000, 30,000.
If I remember, some of the celebrated cases we actually intervened in was around the Bakori area in Katsina state, where many of them were arrested on trump-up charges. What do I mean by trump-up charges? They have been using the levy for years. For years. Overnight, the levy was handed over to one businessman. They didn't know anything about it. They were coming from wherever they were coming, and they were charged for actually trespass. Some of them were arrested and locked in prison. And then thieves were encouraged to move into their own hamlet and steal whatever they had. This happened in the 70s, I'm telling you, around 76, 77.
Another dimension is the unchecked immigration of foreigners into the vast forests in these areas.
At the end of the civil war in Chadi, between Gokonu Adai and Hussein Hebri, a large number of Fulani, migrated to Nigeria. And they went as far as to around my village. Because some of the Fulanis, when they migrated to our area, recognized them. They were even saying, look, we are in trouble. With this kind of Fulani migrating in this area, no matter how long, both the farmers and we, the original Fulanis, we are going to be in trouble.
Farming herders came from far as Guinea and Mali into this area. And it was them that had the culture of violence which they introduced to our communities.
A 2019 report commissioned by the Zamfara state government identifies many issues around governance failure, lack of social justice, and social imbalance as factors that created the atmosphere for the conflict.
For a long period of time, they've been subjected to all sorts of oppression, exertion by our leaders in this part of Nigeria.
One of the oldest bandits operating out of Zamfara state, Shehu Rakif, re-echoes some of these issues.
Me yasa ya kawo muke rigima saboda rashin karatu. Ku da makiya da muke da ba wanda yake da karatu. Sannan mutum ko yana da girma ana iya karantar da shi, ana iya koya mai aiki. Ko doka ta ce su koya ma mutane aiki, su rike su, su tsare su, su tsare dukiyarsu. Babu wannan. Yanzu nan mu ba mu da tsaro, ba mu da wani abun da za mu ci, ba mu da abun da za mu kalla, babu shi daga mu sai itace.
While older bandits like Rakif and a few others have spent years engaged in low-scale criminal activities, mostly cattle rustling and armed robbery, the current wave of violence that come to be known as banditry is traceable to the 2011 murder of the Fulani community leader Alhaji Ishe at Chilin village of Dansado district in Zamfara state. Who was Alhaji Ishe?
Ishe is like a Fulani activist. And to be fair to him, he's a fairly honest person. That whenever there is misunderstanding between Fulani and farmers, he used to go and assess the situation. If a Fulani is wrong, he will tell the Fulani, you are wrong. And he made the Fulani to pay compensation to farmers. And if farmers are wrong, they also tell the farmer they are wrong. And if a farmer is notorious, Ishe will lead the victim from the Fulani to court. To the extent that he will go and hire lawyers in order to protect the Fulani. Not only that, if a traditional ruler is also oppressing the Fulani, he also confronts him. And in fact, investigation of recent has shown clear insight into what actually led to his murder. It was this, his activism, confronted traditional rulers, that led to his murder.
They made a lot of utterances telling the general public that they will not and never allow the soul of Alhaji Ishi to go like that. There must be vengeance. And that was the major trigger that one could actually think about.
The response by local communities to increasing crimes carried out by criminal youth of Fulani stock was to constitute a volunteer force called the Ensakai, armed ostensibly to protect their communities from the bandits' aggression.
Initially what they did was they identified, thieves in the area, in inverted commas, thieves in the area who reside in the various villages and towns. And they killed them. Many of them were killed. After killing them, they now moved into the bush and attacked Fulani, hamlets in those bush. People who had nothing to do with the conflict in the town. The only crime they've committed was to be Fulani. So they attacked them, and many of them were killed. It is a pattern we're able to establish across Northwest. We've interviewed many people. So it's the same pattern. Ensakai, taking the laws into their own hands.
Wallahi akwai sadda udawan mu na taho tsakani na da Allah yan sakai suka tare su tsakanin mace da namiji da dan yaro karami billahi lazi sama da mutum 100 an kashe wallahi sai dai ajewa mace sai a yanke ta tsakani na da Allah a darme mata dan danta wallahi da rai ne ajewa su gada da ruwa wallahi su da ruwa.
This is the road linking Sokoto with the eastern parts of the state to places like Sabon Birni, Goronyo, and Isa. These are areas most affected by banditry in the state. And though this is a very important road linking Sokoto to other parts of the country, travelers are now afraid of plying the road because of instances of attacks on motorists. We travel to some of the areas worst affected to see for ourselves the devastation caused by banditry. We speak to a prominent leader of one of the civilian groups fighting back the bandits, who defends the action of his men as he accused the bandits of committing greater atrocities.
An ce ana kama Fulani ana yankewa. Shin su bandits da ke tahowa su zaka gagari su kashe mutum sama da 30 ko 40, shin su ba a ga matsalar da sun kai ba? Sai ta dan banga ya kama Fulatani ya kashe. Abin magana ce. Bandits akwai gari daya wanda sun kashe mana sama ga 40-80. Ni mutanen ga sun kai musu.
For many years, security forces are engaged in operations to root out the bandits, including through aerial bombardments with mixed results. Several bandits and collaborators were also arrested at different times. With the results from military operation taking long in coming, governments in the affected states adopted various approaches to containing the violence. The Zamfara and Katsina state governments went into dialogues with some of the key bandits and offered amnesty in exchange for ceasefire. But all the past talks have collapsed for what experts attribute to the bandits' erratic nature and the lack of diligence, processes and sincerity on the parts of the governments.
We set to engage them, and gradually we were able to bring most of the leaders out, and they agreed to lay down arms. We did that. That led to surrendering of over 350 assorted AK-47 machine guns and grenades, local lay-made guns, and many items, over 350. It went on very well. We had peace for almost 18 to 24 months, except normal criminality here and there. Marches started flourishing in the communities. As we approach 2019, what we did in Katsina was not done in Zamfara. Zamfara constitutes 70% of our problem. was not done in Zamfara. Their approach was different from ours. Likewise in Kaduna. So we were left alone gradually before the elections of 2019. Almost all the leaders that we had an agreement with were killed.
To understand the deep-seated issues, we traveled to Shinkafi local government in Zamfara state to meet one of the persons whose name rings the bell in Nigeria's banditry landscape. Bello Turji is linked to some of the most audacious attacks on villages between Zamfara and Sokoto states, including a raid on a security base in Sabon Birni and murder of travelers who were burnt in a bus late last year. His story resembles the scenario painted by researchers on the experience of many Fulani youth turned bandits.
Aka kori shanunmu sun kai saniya sama da 1000 sai rana sai da aka kashe muna kanne guda 6 kanne wasu 'yan yara ba su wuce haka ba. Uwayenmu ba kotun da ba su shiga ba su samu shanunsu bari suka kamo kanin mahaifinmu suka sa wuka suka yanki suka hada da 'yan sa-kai suka kamo shi suka yanki. To ina za ka je ka kai kuka kai talaka? 'Yan sa-kai suna kai ma jami'an tsaro kudan da agehi suna cin hanci sai ba ka da laifin komi a kama ka a yanke ma hukuncin ɗauri kaza ba ka da laifin komi kaddam in ka tambaye ka sai a ce ma karmamin gona a yanke ma hukuncin shekara 10 ko a ce ka bada 500. ai mina ne dole in kana da su ka bada tunda kana tsoro a ɗauri kare da rai ba kai komi ba. Ni na ina iya baka tabbaci kabban Qur'ani nan duk ina iya rincewa duk shi ɗaya Shinkafi ya sani duk wani hakimi da a Shinkafi ya sani uban ƙasa kwakai kuriya ya sani uban ƙasa kwari ya sani mahaifina saboda karmamin gona na rance da Allah ya shekara 7 yana shekara da mutum guda yana shari'a shekara 7 karmami wanga na gona wanda za ka azo ga kai duk kotun Najeriya har Abuja ba in ga bai zo ba don Allah ya adalci ce.
Turji bemoans the bloodbath, admitting his role in the violent campaigns.
Kafin nan mahaifata take nan ni sani ina iya baka kwata guda 2 ta yankan mutane a Najeriya kuma gwamnati ba ta san da wagga kwata ba amma ni na san da ita saboda yan uwana ake yanka maza da mata wurin.
But says he is ready to turn a new leaf as he calls for a dialogue to be led by traditional and religious leaders.
Mu abin da yasa muke son ai sulhu jami'an tsaron Najeriya su kashe mutanen da basu je ba su gani ba, 'yan sa-kai su kashe su, mu 'yan bindiga mu je mu kashe su ba bisa duk ka'ida ba.
The kingpin also dissociates bandits like him from jihadist groups, saying they have no political agenda.
Mu da ma ba kungiya muke son mu kafa ta wani addini ba ma'ana ba kungiya muke son mu kafa ta ƙasa ta mu ta kanmu ba, ba wani abu ne muke son mu kafa namu na kanmu ba wata kungiya ta siyasa muke nema ba. Mu saboda rayukan 'yan uwanmu ne kawai muka ɗauki bindiga, yan ba kashe muna rayukan 'yan uwa haka kawai za mu je mu samu mutane mu ta kashe su don dai ba mu da imani.
The Emir of Bungudu, Alhaji Hassan Attahiru, who had himself spent 32 days in the hands of bandits following his abduction in a highway kidnapping last year, acknowledges the role traditional rulers like him can play in arresting the situation.
There is a social approach that has to be taken. Now, we have lost out our farmlands, we have lost out our hardened environment. These were multi-billion naira vacations, which employed millions of people. You know, so we have to find a way of restoring these things, and that's the only thing that will make people go back and have means of livelihood, and also, you know, have some economic means by which they can go away from banditry. It's not going to be easy, but I assure you that if there is synergy between all concerned people, effective synergy, not just by word of mouth, I'm sure we could solve this problem in not too distant future.
The Emir says it is important to explore all avenues that will lead to ending the carnage.
There has to be some, comprehensive collaboration so that we can evolve a tactic of utilizing every strength that we have. Opportunities should be given to anybody who is a criminal and wants to come back to become a good person. If we don't do that, they were even negating what the Almighty has ordered us to do. But then it has to be done in a very controlled manner.
Would the bandits relapse into criminal activities in the aftermath of previous peak sparks? Prominent persons like Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai have voiced their opposition to future talks. On its part, the federal government last year approached a court for an order declaring the bandits as terrorists and went ahead to gazette the ruling.
When you now term them terrorists, it gives the military and the security authorities more latitude on how to deal with them.
However, experts like Dr. Rufai insist that the likelihood of ending the killings through the barrel is slim.
I am talking about the nature and gravity of the problem because of the number of people serving as bandits, the number of young boys serving as active bandits within the age of 17 to even 8 years. The number of people we call the part-time bandits, providing a lot of services to the bandits, but at the end of the day, they retire back home and they are treated as innocent people. That is not even the problem. The problem is the number of people in the rural areas seeking for recruitments into banditry. So when you look at the nature of the problem, it is a problem that is just too enormous vis-a-vis looking at the number of the security personnel, the armed forces put together.
Many of the governors agreed at the beginning to interact with the bandits. But when the same bandits went back and became even more vicious, I think we'd rather leave it to the individual state governments to decide on whether they are going to enter into any agreement with bandits or not. The federal government cannot decree by fiat.
But for government to dialogue, Dr. Muhammad says it has to come from a point of strength.
You negotiate from a position of strength, not from a position of weakness. We need a holistic approach. In fact, internally and externally. Here I'm specifically talking about Niger Republic. And to do that, we have to increase the force. We have to equip them. We have to bring in technology, drones and co, to be able to identify their own spots. There will certainly be some collateral damages.
You must have a SWOT analysis of the situation, meaning you must look at the strengths and the weaknesses of those you are going to dialogue with. And you must also understand the gravity of the problem. And this gravity of the problem has to do with understanding the psychology of the bandits.
But beyond dialogues and military operations, observers say finding solution to the conflict will require addressing the roots of the problem. There is the need for improved justice system with a more accountable justice administration. Perpetrators on all sides should be made to face the law. There should be equitable access to education and social services. Resource challenges following the conflict should be tackled. In the immediate, however, there is the need to pay adequate attention to worsening humanitarian crises in the region.